Hello everybody. I am going to talk about a book called Building Leadership Character, written by Amy Newman, which I really like because it goes beyond any other traditional leadership book that you can find out there, because it kind of offers the reader a path for them to find their own leadership character. And so the author uses a storytelling approach and real life scenarios, kind of to dive into every single leadership character dimension. Newman tries to capture several approaches of corporations and people that have had to go through difficult situations, and they have had to learn from their own mistakes. And that is an invitation for the reader to analyze and reflect on those situations and learn their own leadership character, learn emotional intelligence, and develop their own leadership skills. Now, the 7 dimensions of leadership character are vulnerability, authenticity, integrity, accountability, courage, humility, and compassion. And I am going to explain each and every one of them. But before diving into the dimensions, I'm going to try to clarify what leadership character is as a whole. According to Newman, leaders choose character, which means having leadership character is a matter of choice rather than position or status. We as people, we as leaders, we always want to live better lives and create better outcomes, but nothing is going to happen unless we make the choice to do something about it, right? Unless we make the decision to act on it. So Newman tries to explain the 3 components that a leader has to embrace in order to enforce leadership. The first one is being competent. And being competent means having abilities, having skills, having knowledge. The second component is being committed. And being committed is putting the effort into using those competencies. So if you don't have commitment, then you're wasting your competencies, And the third one, for me, it's the most important one, and this is where we're gonna start talking about in the rest of the video, is having character. And having character is basically having the drive to develop your competencies and to demonstrate commitment. Now you see why this is so important, because without this, none of this would happen. So, character, it's basically the whole collection of traits, values, virtues that define a person and a leader as a whole. That's why it's super important to develop leadership character, so we can start working step by step to become the leaders that we want to be. So the first dimension is vulnerability. As leaders, it is very important to form connections and build trust. And even though vulnerability means risk and exposure, and a lot of people think that this is a weakness, it is actually a strength. By definition, according to Newman, vulnerability is being open and accepting of uncertainty, of risks, and emotional exposure, which then leads to foster trust within your team. And once you leave shame behind, sometimes we are ashamed of showing who we are or what we did wrong or things like that. Once we leave all that behind, we're gonna stop being stuck in one place, and there's only room left for resilience. That's why when facing failure, vulnerability is so important, because it helps us acknowledge those situations and allows us and others to be more empathetic, right? And to say, hey, I need help. And that's when all their minds start working into making a solution. And that's how it helps companies just moving forward. So basically, leaders don't need to be fearless or all powerful or all perfect. They just have to be open to imperfection. The second leadership character dimension is authenticity. Authenticity means being genuine, being real, putting your whole self forward. Nobody likes, respects, or trusts a person who they consider is fake. And that's really important. If you are coming as untrustworthy, it's not gonna work within a company. So by definition, Amy Newman explains that authenticity has 4 components. It's having knowledge of yourself, is being objective and having objective processing. It's being real in your relationships, and acting consistently with who you are. But for that, you need to have knowledge of who you are. And so there is a little quote that I like from the book. It's be wholehearted, because wholehearted people are willing to let go of who they should be to be who they are. And that summarizes perfectly what authenticity is. The third dimension is integrity. Authenticity and integrity are kind of similar, but authenticity is something others can sense, while integrity is something others can assess with certainty. With authenticity, people cannot see who you are on the inside, but they can sense whether or not you are being sincere. But with integrity, people can actually observe your actions and evaluate your behavior. As leaders, we can preach all we want. We can say anything that we want, but if our actions are not supportive of what we say we are, the respect and trust that we've built is gone, and all the sense of community that we've been working towards disappears. So leaders of integrity are consistent. They have a fit in between words and actions, which means promise keeping and showing the values that you profess you have. The fourth dimension is accountability, which is very related to responsibility. The difference is that we can see accountability more in rules and regulations, and responsibility is more seen as a choice. By definition, throughout the book, they explain that accountability is the obligation to report, to explain, and to justify something, being responsible and answerable. Responsibility, on the other hand, is more being accountable for something within one's power and control. So you choose to be accountable. Responsibility is choosing to be accountable. So an accountable leader is a person who accepts consequences, it's conscientious, and just takes ownership over their actions. The fifth dimension is courage. People usually think that being courageous means being fearless, having no fear at all. But that's not true. In fact, it's the opposite. People have fears, people face fears, and being courageous means being brave and demonstrate that you can overcome those fears. It's basically being resilient. So there are 3 things that a courageous leader kind of has to go through to be courageous. First, a leader is supposed to show commitment to their own ideas, to their own beliefs. Second, they have to be aware of the risks of following and supporting those ideas. And third, they have to be willing to overcome those risks, to face those risks in order to endure them, And so that is why courage is very related to the first dimension, which is vulnerability. As a leader, you have to show those fears. You have to say, I have these fears. But being courageous means, hey, we can overcome those fears. We can go through them, and that's how we are going to progress. In the book, they say vulnerability is the most accurate measure of courage because of what I just explained. And so with courage, we face and manage our anxiety, and that's how we get to show our humanity. Our second to last dimension is humility. And I am going to explain these with a sentence that I liked from the book that says, being humble means being unimpressed with yourself. And I don't think there is a more accurate description of it. Leaders with humility recognize their own limitations and seek improvement. They seek a lot of feedback. They are driven by self-awareness and are willing to learn more about what they could do to improve. So they are reflective. I think that's a very important thing to understand. Leaders are reflective. They can't be close to feedback. They can't be close to others trying to show them a newer and better path. That's how organizations grow. That's how they progress. That's how they develop in a constant changing world. So when organizations start embracing humility, people are willing to discuss mistakes openly, and they strive for continuous learning. Finally, our last dimension is compassion. Being a compassionate leader means being ethically involved, which means being able to understand that someone is going through something hard, through a hard situation, trying to understand that situation and give meaning to it, feel empathetic, and then finally act on it. That's how you as a leader are able to reduce anxiety within the team, are able to release some tension. There's less employee turnover, and you are able to build a better community environment, a family environment. Being able to put yourself in the shoes of others, being understanding, making sense of other people's thought process, that is being compassionate.